I am a millionaire. I'll make you pay for what you've done.
A man in an expensive suit walks into my courtroom, sees everyone standing for the judge, and simply sits down, arms crossed, smirking, like he is watching a show that doesn't apply to him. That is how I met Vincent Morrison. It was a hot Thursday morning in July, the kind of day where Providence feels like it is melting and everyone's a little on edge. I am reviewing my docket around 8:30, sipping Christina's strong coffee, the good Italian stuff that actually wakes you up when I see his name. Vincent Morrison, 17 traffic violations in 3 months. 17 doesn't sound too dramatic, right? Just wait. That number alone told me plenty: reckless driving, excessive speeding, and ignoring traffic signals, not just careless mistakes, a clear pattern of someone who believed the rules were optional. When I entered the courtroom at exactly 9 a.m., Christina called, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Caprio." Everyone in the room stood, everyone except one man in the front row. That man was Vincent Morrison, sir. I said calmly, "Please stand for the court." He turned his head slowly, looked at me as if I had inconvenienced him, and replied, "I'm comfortable where I am, Judge." Right then, before a single word about fines or violations was spoken, I knew this wasn't going to be an ordinary traffic case. People talk in a city like Providence. Business owners, courthouse staff, even other defendants, and everything I would later hear about him matched exactly what I was seeing in that moment. This man's attitude in my courtroom was not a one-time performance. It was a habit. The whole courtroom went silent. You know, that feeling when something happens that is so inappropriate, so shocking, that everyone forgets to breathe. That is what this was. In 40 years on this bench, I've never seen such blatant disrespect from someone who wasn't drunk or mentally ill. "Mr. Morrison," I said, keeping my voice level, "standing for the court is not a request. It is a requirement that shows respect for the law." He actually laughed, not a chuckle, not a nervous giggle, a full condescending laugh. "Judge," he said, examining his manicured nails like he was bored, "I've been standing all my life. Today I think I'll sit." Standing all his life, this millionaire thought showing basic respect in a court of law was somehow beneath his dignity. I looked around my courtroom and saw working people, retirees, single mothers, folks who understood that respect isn't optional, it is earned and given. "Mr. Morrison," I tried one more time, "I am going to ask you once more to stand and show proper respect for these proceedings." That is when he did something that still makes my blood boil. He leaned back in his seat, put his hands behind his head like he was relaxing on a beach chair, and said, "Make me, make me." A grown man worth $50 million just told a judge to make him show respect in a court of law. The audacity was breathtaking. I stood up from my bench, something I rarely do, and looked directly at this arrogant piece of work. "Mr. Morrison," I said, my voice getting colder, "you seem to be under the impression that your wealth exempts you from basic courtroom decorum." "My wealth," he replied, still lounging in his chair like he owned the place, "exempts me from a lot of things, Judge, including taking orders from civil servants." Civil servants, he just called me a judge with 40 years of service, a civil servant, like I was his employee. The disrespect was so thick you could cut it with a knife. But here is what really got me steaming. Behind Morrison, I could see a young mother bouncing her baby, trying to keep the child quiet out of respect for the court. She probably took time off work she couldn't afford to lose, probably had to find babysitting she couldn't afford to pay just to handle some minor traffic matter responsibly. I saw an elderly veteran removing his cap and standing straight despite obvious pain in his back. You could see him wincing, but he showed respect anyway. I saw teenagers who'd probably never been in a courtroom before showing more maturity and respect than this 50-year-old millionaire. These people understood something Morrison didn't. They understood that respect isn't about what you can afford. It is about recognizing that we're all equal under the law, that the courtroom is sacred ground, where wealth doesn't matter, where everyone gets the same justice. "Mr. Morrison," I said, sitting back down and folding my hands, "your behavior is not only disrespectful to this court, but to every person in this room who understands what basic decency looks like. Basic decency." He turned around and looked at the other people waiting for their cases, like he was surveying peasants at a medieval court. The look on his face was pure contempt, like these hard-working people were somehow beneath his notice. "Judge, I employ more people than anyone in this room. I pay more taxes than everyone here combined. My businesses bring millions of dollars to this city's economy. I think I've earned the right to sit when I am tired." Earned the right. This man thought his economic success bought him the right to disrespect the legal system that protected his business, his property, his entire way of life. He thought money could purchase exemptions from basic human courtesy. The young mother I mentioned, she was staring at Morrison in disbelief. Here she was struggling to make ends meet, showing perfect respect for the court, while this millionaire acted like common decency was beneath him. "Mr. Morrison," I continued, "your financial success doesn't give you special privileges in my courtroom. The law applies equally to everyone, rich, poor, and everyone in between. The law," he said with a sneer that made my father roll over in his grave, "is whatever people like me say it is. We write the checks, we fund the campaigns, we make the rules. You think this little courtroom matters to someone like me? We make the rules." This wasn't just disrespect anymore. This was a man openly declaring that he believed rich people were above the law. In my courtroom, in front of hardworking citizens who played by the rules every day of their lives, who treated the justice system with the respect it deserved. I thought about my father right then, Giuseppe Caprio, who came to this country from Italy with nothing but calloused hands and a willingness to work. How he took any job he could find. Construction, factory work, night security. Never complaining, never expecting handouts, always showing respect for authority, even when authority didn't always show respect back to him. How he taught me that character isn't measured by what you own, but by how you treat people who can't do anything for you. The contrast between my father's values and Morrison's entitlement was stark. Dad would have been ashamed to sit when others stood, would have been mortified to treat a judge with anything less than complete respect, regardless of whether he agreed with the ruling. Mr. Morrison, I said, standing up again, you're about to learn that money can buy you many things, but it can't buy you immunity from the consequences of contempt. Contempt, he actually looked amused, like I told him a joke. Judge, you want to see contempt? I could buy this courthouse and turn it into a parking garage. I could buy your salary for the next 10 years and not notice the expense. I could buy your job if I wanted to. By my job, this maniac thought everything was for sale, including the justice system itself. He thought judges were just another commodity he could purchase, like cars or houses or politicians. That is when I'd had enough. Mr. Morrison, your refusal to show proper respect for this court constitutes contempt of court. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Morrison to the holding cell until he is prepared to conduct himself appropriately. The bailiff, a good man named Officer Rodriguez, started walking toward Morrison's seat. Morrison looked at him like he was looking at an insect. You are not serious, Morrison said, but his voice had lost some of its arrogance. You can't arrest me for sitting down. I am not arresting you for sitting down, I told him. I am arresting you for deliberate and calculated disrespect to this court's authority. Officer Rodriguez was standing right next to him now. Sir, the bailiff said politely, please come with me. Morrison looked around the courtroom like he was expecting someone to rescue him. When nobody did, when he realized that his money couldn't buy him out of the situation, something shifted in his expression. This is ridiculous, he shouted, finally standing up, but only because he was getting agitated. Do you people have any idea who you are dealing with? We're dealing with someone who thinks wealth makes him better than everyone else, I replied, and we're about to show him how wrong he is. That is, when Morrison completely lost it, he started pointing at people in the courtroom like he was identifying enemies. You, he shouted at the young mother with the baby, you think this is justice? This kangaroo court. The young woman just stared at him in shock. She'd been nothing but respectful. And here was this millionaire attacking her because he was finally facing consequences. And you, he turned to the elderly veteran. You're probably enjoying this, aren't you? Watching someone successful get torn down by the system. The veteran, God bless him, just looked Morrison straight in the eye and said quietly, son, I fought in 2 wars for the right to sit in courtrooms like this. You are disrespecting everything I bled for. That should have shut Morrison up, should have made him realize how far he'd fallen. Instead, it made him worse. I don't care about your wars, old man, Morrison screamed. I don't care about any of you. You are all nobodies compared to what I've accomplished. Nobodies. He just called a war veteran, a working mother, honest citizens trying to resolve legal matters. He called them all nobodies because they didn't have his bank account. Mr. Morrison, I said, my voice cutting through his tantrum, you just demonstrated why you need to spend some time thinking about what respect really means. Officer Rodriguez put his hand on Morrison's arm. Sir, please come quietly. Morrison jerked his arm away. Get your hands off me. Do you know what kind of lawyers I can afford? I'll have your badge. I'll have all your badges. That is when he made his biggest mistake yet. He turned back to me and jabbed his finger in my direction. Judge, he snarled. You just made the worst enemy of your career. When I am done with you, you'll be lucky to get a job as a mall security guard, threatening a judge in open court with 30 witnesses. This millionaire had just graduated from contempt to criminal intimidation. Mr. Morrison, I said calmly, you've now added threatening a judge to your list of violations. Officer Rodriguez, please take Mr. Morrison into custody immediately. You can't do this to me, Morrison shouted as the bailiff began placing him in handcuffs. I am Vincent Morrison. I own half this city. Mr. Morrison, I told him as they cuffed his hands behind his back. You own businesses. You don't own people, and you certainly don't own justice. As they led him toward the door, Morrison kept screaming threats and insults. But something interesting happened. The other people in my courtroom, that young mother, that old veteran, the teenagers, the working folks, they started standing up, not because I asked them to, but because they wanted to show that they understood what this moment meant. They were showing that respect isn't about money. It is about recognizing that we're all equal under the law, whether you drive a beat-up Honda or a brand-new Lamborghini. Judge Morrison yelled from the doorway, this isn't over. You have no idea who you are messing with. Mr. Morrison, I called back. You are right. This isn't over. You'll be staying in holding until you are ready to apologize to this court and everyone in it. After they took him away, the courtroom was buzzing. People were shaking their heads, whispering about what they just witnessed. Christina came over to my bench, Judge. She said quietly, in 20 years of working here, I've never seen anything like that. Neither have I, Christina. The young mother approached my bench. Your Honor, she said, thank you for standing up to him. My little girl was watching, and she needs to see that bullies don't always win. The elderly veteran came up too, Judge. He said, that man insulted every person who ever served this country with honor. You did the right thing. For the next 4 hours, Morrison sat in the holding cell. Every 30 minutes, Officer Rodriguez would check on him, ask if he was ready to show proper respect. Every 30 minutes, Morrison would demand to call his lawyers, threaten lawsuits, insist this was all beneath him. Finally, around 2 p.m., something changed. Maybe the reality of sitting in a jail cell started to sink in. Maybe he realized that his money wasn't going to magic him out of this situation. Maybe he just got tired of being treated like any other contempt case. Officer Rodriguez came to my chambers. Judge, Mr. Morrison says he wants to address the court. Is he prepared to show proper respect? He says he is. All right, bring him back up. When they brought Morrison back into my courtroom, he looked different. Still expensive suit, still manicured nails, but the arrogance was gone. He looked smaller somehow, like reality had finally caught up with his fantasy of immunity. Mr. Morrison, I said, are you prepared to conduct yourself appropriately in my courtroom? He stood up immediately. No hesitation, no attitude, no smirk. Yes, Your Honor. Are you prepared to show respect for the court and everyone in it? Yes, Your Honor. His voice was quiet, almost humble. Are you prepared to apologize for your behavior? He looked around the courtroom. Some of the same people were still there, waiting for their cases. The young mother was gone, but the elderly veteran had stayed. Morrison's eyes met the veterans for just a moment. Yes, Your Honor, he said. I want to apologize to the court, to you, and to everyone here. My behavior was inexcusable. It wasn't a great apology. It felt more like something his lawyer had coached him to say during those 4 hours in holding, but it was a start. Mr. Morrison, I said, let me ask you something. What do you think you learned today? He thought about that for a moment. I learned that money doesn't make me better than anyone else, and that respect has to be earned, not bought, and that my success doesn't give me the right to treat people badly. These were all the right words, but I could tell he was still processing whether he really believed them. Sometimes it takes more than 4 hours in jail to change a lifetime of entitlement. Mr. Morrison, I continued, your original violations, 17 traffic offenses in 3 months, show a pattern of believing rules don't apply to you. Today's behavior in my courtroom confirms that pattern, so here is what is going to happen. I sentenced him to pay maximum fines for all 17 violations, plus court costs. I ordered him to complete 40 hours of community service working with low-income families. And I required him to attend defensive driving school like any other reckless driver, but the most important part, I banned him from my courtroom for 6 months. If he got so much as a parking ticket in that time, he'd have to appear before a different judge, because I wasn't going to deal with his attitude again until he proved he'd changed. Mr. Morrison, I concluded, you told me earlier that you employ a lot of people and pay a lot of taxes. Those are good things. And this community benefits from your business success. But success without humility is just arrogance with a bank account. Yes, Your Honor. Your wealth gives you opportunities and responsibilities, not privileges and exemptions. I hope you'll use your influence to set a better example going forward. I will, Your Honor. As he left that day, Morrison walked differently, still expensive clothes, still rich beyond most people's dreams. But something about his posture had changed. The swagger was gone. 6 months later, I got a letter from him, handwritten, not typed by some assistant, Judge Caprio. I wanted you to know that I completed my community service working with families in need. It opened my eyes to struggles I never understood. I also wanted to apologize again for my behavior in your courtroom. I was wrong to think my success made me above showing basic respect. Thank you for teaching me that lesson. Vincent Morrison, the elderly veteran I mentioned, he stopped by my chambers a week after the incident. Judge, he said, I've been watching that Morrison fellow since he got out. What about him? Well, the veteran smiled. I saw him at the grocery store yesterday, holding the door for an elderly lady when the cashier had trouble with her register. He waited patiently instead of demanding a manager. That is good to hear. But here's the best part, Judge. He stopped and talked to a homeless veteran outside the store, gave the man money, but also sat and talked with him for 10 minutes, like he was a real person. Maybe Morrison really had learned something. Maybe 4 hours in a holding cell had taught him what a lifetime of wealth had, and that every person deserves basic respect. My father used to tell me, Frank, money reveals who you really are. It doesn't change you. It just makes more of what was already there. Some people use money to build walls. Others use it to build bridges. Vincent Morrison learned the hard way that no amount of money exempts you from basic human decency, that wealth without respect is just poverty with better furniture. I am Frank Caprio. Remember, you can buy a lot of things with money, but you can't buy your way out of being a decent human being. Thanks for listening, and God bless.